Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Our Global Outlook segment is sponsored by Maury's monthly newsletter, Global Outlook. If you don't already have a subscription, you'd like to get a free copy, just log on to our website, theworldreport.org. 60 Minutes, hardly a conservative report, reports an unbelievable story on the lies of Benghazi, but in the mainstream media fashion, it fails to name names. Spain, Germany, and many of the world's leaders are fuming over the NSA spying on virtually everyone on the planet, while the Saudis say they have no use anymore for the U.S. I guess it's Bush's fault. Maury, where do you want to start with this?
There's a very simple answer to the whole thing. First of all, I'm not going to go into detail. This is not only the greatest land on earth, we have discovered natural resources we never knew we had. You know what the real value of this country is?
100 trillion.
$180 trillion. You're close, because $100 trillion was added by the fact that we have unlimited natural gas and oil and coal in this country, much more so than any other country in the world, including Saudi Arabia and Russia.
And so if we paid off all of our unfunded liabilities, we'd have about $1 billion left?
Actually, the funny thing is the unfunded liabilities will be generated by the fact that the revenues coming from using these resources are going to pay for.
I was just kidding with you.
I know that, but the point is, the focus of attention on what's going on, it goes back to the fact of leadership. I say that 3 different times. We are living today in a society where leadership is looked down on. I've been around long enough to see a generational change that I never would think would happen in my whole lifetime.
What do you mean by that?
I mean the idea that to be strong, to be outspoken, to be charismatic, to be passionate in your beliefs, to be willing to talk about something that does not conform to public...
like we talked about earlier, the patsying of America.
Yes, it is the weakening of will of America, and also escapism, and that is caused by, ironically, this tremendous evolution of technology, and especially in the area of communication, which you can see anything you want to see. You don't have. When's the last time anybody wrote you a private letter? I mean, writing has become an art, a lost art in this country. A lot of the creative instincts of man and woman have gone. I mean, they're no longer there. Everybody's tweeting, twittering, or whatever else. You know, I mean, really, it's. I know.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right.
So we do not have the kind of climate anymore. Look, I'm still in business, especially through my writings and my consulting work. I have access to roughly about 300 independent business people. They all have given, they don't want to have anything to do with politics. They've become apolitical, not anti-political, totally indifferent. They say it's no use anymore. None of them would even think about running for
dog catcher.
For a council. They don't want to be insulted. You know, when you're running a business, you're the dictator of that business. You have good advisors. You're not going to take any guff from anybody because they'll get fired. That's the way business are run, because you have to make a profit.
Well, you have to have a little bit something wrong with you to want to be a politician today.
I think you, more than that, you have to have the strength of a giant, and you're right. You have to be a little bit goofy to even think.
And you have to lie, deceive, cheat, steal.
Well, it isn't quite. I'll give you one. I'll give you one instance. My wife, who has a lot of influence over me, when I was president of my first company, I was a young guy. It was during the Kennedy era, by the way, when young people were looked on as the wave of the future. And she says, "I'll bet you couldn't win a school board position." And she kept telling me, "Oh, there's no way." I said, "Well, I don't have the time." It's an excuse. Anyway, I ran. I barely won. A year later, I became president of the school board. I ran for 2 terms automatically. There was no opposition. The 3rd term, there was opposition because there were 7 people on the board, 4 conservatives, 3 very liberal people. If I go off, the guy that was headed for that position was going to be a liberal. Chuck Percy, do you remember the name? Senator Chuck Percy from Illinois. He was a very famous senator, and then other politicians, Everett Dirksen. I mean, people like that came to see me. I mean, for a little school district in South suburban Chicago, they said, you know what's going to happen? This whole area is going to become totally liberalized if you get off. So I ran. I had to run for the first time and the only time in my life. For 6 weeks, I was insulted. I was ridiculed. The newspaper, which was of a liberal persuasion, made fun of me and said I was power crazy. You know, the thing is, I said, wait a second, I'm a businessman. I don't have to take this kind of stuff anymore. So I decided I never, ever will expose myself again to anything where I am going to get criticized head on. I'll just stay and be a good business guy.
And be criticized by your wife instead.
Well, that's a different situation.
Now let's talk about the NSA spying, because I think that this is a scandal that's going to grow. First of all, the American people are being spied upon. We know that. Every phone call, every email, every text is being logged.
Except you and I, we're not important.
No, we're totally being logged. But you have too much money, they're not going to worry about you. So what about the NSA spying on Merkel, on Spain's leaders? This does not
question.
look well for America.
No, but you see, there's duplicitousness at work here, because the way they even got some military people saying, well, we're doing that because we're protecting ourselves. You know, we're finding out what's going on. Look at how the British, the fabulous intelligence service they had. Look at the Mossad in Israel, probably the #1 in the whole world. And they're spying on everybody where they think the security of the nation is at stake. What you're talking about is the security of the nation isn't at work when you're spying on your best friend in Europe, Angela Merkel. You got something else in mind.
Or when you're spying on John Roberts or John Boehner or Mitch McConnell, and you wonder where these guys are making these decisions from.
Yeah.
Have they not been compromised?
You
it
know
makes
something?
Me wonder.
Well, it doesn't make me wonder at all. I would make a bet, and I have no proof, no evidence, nothing to make this statement. The most unbelievable decision that was ever made was when John Roberts, Chief Justice of the Supreme Court,
rewrote the law
in
so
order
it could be passed.
so Obamacare would, something happen, and maybe historians of the future will find out. What really puzzled me
was when he left right after?
To Malta. Have you ever been to Malta? Do you even know where Malta is? I don't mean to be.
No.
Malta is a rock in the middle of the Mediterranean. I took a tremendous pounding from the Germans, and I give the Maltese people credit. They stood and they...
And it might be the only place on the planet where the NSA can't surveillance.
That's probably true. But you get my point? He ran off to how would a guy who's Chief Justice of the American Supreme Court run off to a no-place island?
2 days after he pushed that.
Yeah.
And he rewrote the law in order to make it pass.
And the guy that was supposed to be against it, Antonin Kennedy, who is, by the way, I met him once when he was out, a fabulous man, but a very honest man. He was against it, and he tried to convince John Roberts. He couldn't understand how John Roberts, probably the most conservative man on the court.
Are you talking about Scalia, or are you talking about Kennedy?
No, I'm talking about Kennedy was so puzzled by the fact that Chief Justice John Roberts would not vote and make a majority of people that called Obamacare unconstitutional.
It was clearly unconstitutional. The government can't make you buy a product that they serve.
But you see, they could not, the government, and again, no evidence to back up the statement, but Obama could not have his legacy destroyed by the Supreme Court making this unconstitutional, because it could have very